Good morning and thank you very much for joining us. I am Yori Folari. I'm a bit excited, the national minimum wage thing. The president inaugurated the Tripartite National Minimum Wage Committee yesterday. So is there reason to be excited? I mean, it sounds good, the minimum wage. People say, your wage can't take you home at the lower level in Nigeria. And the president, has come up with this idea that the Tripartite National Minimum Wage Committee is going to do the work that will lead us on to perhaps a more realistic minimum wage. It's 18,000 at the moment. That doesn't mean that everybody that should pay is able to pay or has paid. So we have the problem of, look, the current national minimum wage, there are challenges, but the president wants to see us out of those challenges. And so this Tripartite National Minimum Wage Committee, it has all the stakeholders involved, and in particular, governors, because they, usually are the defaulters where there would be a default. People to look at this subject with me, Dr. Luke Onyeka-Keya. We're very glad to have him again, member of the editorial board of The Guardian. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you very much.
Indeed, my pleasure.
Nice to
and the other, you see, that's why I'm not wearing a tie this morning. I just left the ties for the doctors. The other doctor we have is Dr. Austin Weze. He lectures at Pan Atlantic University. Thank you very, very much for coming on.
Yeah, good to be here again.
Indeed, my pleasure.
Yeah.
Good to see you again, Austin.
Yeah.
So let me start with you, if I could, Luke. Ordinarily, if you weren't a Nigerian, if you hadn't been in Nigeria in the past 20, 30 years, this might be exciting. But why I said that is that we've seen these attempts before, and so far, I guess the expression is not yet uhuru. What are the prospects this time around with the president's, attitude to it, of bringing everybody that is involved to the table, and so that when the recommendations are made and it is sent to the National Assembly, as the president has said will be the order of things, there will be very, very little work to be done because nobody will be opposing. What are the prospects?
Thank you very much. The idea of a minimum wage coming up at this time in Nigeria by the Buhari administration, for me, I am looking at it as, could this be one of the changes we are looking for? Because right now, we have a minimum wage which is on paper. Mm-hmm. It's not being well implemented by all the stakeholders. Many governors protested against it. Those who are paying are not paying regularly. So there's a problem. The private sector doesn't pay. Many private sector, sector of the economy, they don't pay.
The minimum wage?
They don't, many of them don't pay.
Does that really means that they actually pay much below the minimum wage?
They pay much below the minimum wage. You might imagine somebody who is employed, say, as a security officer, security.
Okay.
Or even, there are some, even people, qualified nurses employed in hospitals and the rest of them, private hospitals, they are paid 10,000. Some are paid 5,000, 8,000.
That's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. So that's why I say the minimum wage as we have it now is just on paper. So in countries where minimum wage exists, it is enforced. If you leave it to people, then many people will not be able to pay, or they will not pay. It has to be enforced. So if the president is coming up again with this idea, then I believe he must have thought over it and he's ready to carry it through and then implement it. So if that is the case, then that's a good prospect for Nigerian workers.
Okay, I would have been a bit encouraged when the president got to the part of his speech that says look, we have signed, that is Nigeria, we have signed up the International Labour Organization Minimum Wage Fixing Convention number 131 of Minimum Wage Fixing Machinery Convention number 26 ratified by Nigeria. I said, well, that sounds heavy duty enough. Everybody, those ponderous terms, they should just make sure everybody is in line. What do you think, Austin?
Well, it's going back to the 80s and 70s. I once received a minimum wage, level 4, 125 naira.
No,
Yes.
Austin.
No,
Austin. That
was
wasn't
a
a minimum
scale,
wage.
salary
Level
scale.
4,
Salary scale.
You had school sat at
Yes.
that time.
So that was not a minimum
no,
wage.
It wasn't a minimum wage.
That was my level.
that
Some
was a
people
very
were
standard
getting
wage.
less than that.
Yes. Don't forget, you were buying
I got-
television, you were buying fan, you were buying stereo,
I was also
stereo
a teacher
amplifier
that
out
time.
of it.
Now,
That wasn't a
You know,
minimum wage.
So that was
that amount, that's the reason why I
was
brought
the
that.
minimum wage for school set leavers.
Yes.
Level
Yeah.
04.
Level 04.
Now, that money was able to take me home at that time.
But it's not a minimum wage.
It's not a minimum wage.
So we're talking about minimum wage
We're
now.
talking about minimum wage.
Now, what about the Udoji thing that happened?
It was a salary increase.
That was,
Salary
again,
increase.
that was
Yes.
also a salary increase. It
Good.
wasn't for the lowest
No.
paid Nigerian worker.
No.
Because
That's
don't
right.
forget that when you were on level 4, there were still porters.
Yes.
You
People
know,
were getting level 2,
yeah,
level
yes,
2,
depending
level
on
3.
where you were, maybe they were
Then level
crane
4.
drivers,
Yeah.
you know.
Now, Yuri, yeah, well, come to think about it.
Hmm.
The constitution of this committee, that's one aspect, is broad.
Yes.
It has its own weight and challenges too when you have a large, but to have everyone who's supposed to be there,
Stakeholders.
a stakeholder in there, it's a good point, okay? Now, the question is, the minimum wage, is it the answer to this, to workers' problem? Why are workers always clamoring for monetary input? What is the state doing to help them save part of this money? There is no savings. Okay, I'll give you a typical example. There's a minimum wage in Singapore. When I went there for a study leave, I looked at all these things. A minimum wage, but you don't get all the money. Government, some private sectors that could not pay that minimum wage, government has a way of augmenting for them. They will assess the private sector, rather than because their policy was to have full employment. Everybody that wants to work must work. They don't want to see any idle person. So that minimum wage, some companies, private companies, could not afford to pay it. So what the government of Singapore did was to say, okay, you can afford to pay this. If it is $5 less, the government will make it up to make sure that everybody gets a minimum. Is it part of the things that they will be discussing? We're just giving them ideas on what to consider.
Yeah, okay, exactly. Because we're looking at prospects and
Yes,
challenges
yes.
of this,
Because many people
particular-
may not afford to pay even if it's 50,000. So what is the government going to do? Will they augment the difference to bring everybody to the same level? Because if you don't, it will encourage corruption. That's the point.
Yes.
So because one way of fighting corruption, even in Singapore, was to make sure that the salary between the private sector and the public sector, there's not much difference.
Well, yeah, okay, yeah. I'm going to come back to you. But coming back to you, Luke, there is a minimum wage fixing machinery convention we hear. All those nice highfalutin things coming from the United Nations. Nigeria has actually ratified that, and the president referred to it in his speech. So there is the knowledge that there is a problem here. Austin was talking about not everybody pays. The private sector, for instance, and that might be surprising to some people because you'd think that the private sector, because of how they do their things, but at least one is hearing that even the private sector takes advantage of the situation and actually does not pay up to the minimum wage in some cases. So now that we have governors, and the president noted it himself, now that governors are part of this, state governors, private sector employers are part of the process, in terms of the prospects for this committee, is it going to make that much of a difference? Because governors are the people who defaulted. Not every governor. Some governors did, I think, are able to just stay there. I think is there not one or perhaps two saying that actually we go above the minimum wage? It's all a statistical thing. It's all about figures. If you pay $18,500, then you actually can say that you're above the minimum wage. But do you think it's going to make a difference that governors and employers of labor are going to be part of this, because they would be the big stumbling block that with anything you come up with.
Yeah, thank you very much. Like I said, I believe this government must have thought over this issue. And that is why they now came up the way they have come.
Yes, because they
now,
know people are suffering.
When 18,000 was fixed, many state governments protested that they were not carried along.
Yes.
Many of them said, no, we cannot pay. We are not carried along. We are not part of it. The federal government cannot fix minimum wage for us. So I believe that is why the government now thought it wise that, okay, these governors have to be part of it.
But there's a proviso in the president's, that part of the president's speech where he says, we're looking for a minimum wage that, you know, taking into cognizance the ability of each tier to actually pay.
Now, if we are talking of minimum wage,
yes,
minimum wage is minimum wage.
But
it's a benchmark.
It is.
It's a benchmark.
But I was a bit concerned that, is the president not sort of hinting that, wait, minimum wage will differ from place to place? Since he went and added that, depending upon the ability of the various layers to pay.
No, maybe I should say this.
Mm-hmm.
I think I wouldn't expect the president to have, you know, brought in that kind of clause in his speech.
Okay.
You know, because minimum wage is minimum wage, is a benchmark.
Okay.
Minimum wage is not in Europe and America, you know, in the developed world where there is minimum wage. It's a national thing. It's a national thing, or is a county thing. Is
okay.
You know, it may differ. Let me say this. It may differ from place to place. For instance, I lived in Japan myself. Mm-hmm. I worked there. Mm-hmm. The minimum wage in Tokyo is not the same. I lived in Yamanashi, which is outskirts.
Okay.
It's lower. Mm-hmm. So the point is, in Nigeria, if we want to do the real thing, then a place like Lagos, which is cosmopolitan, which is supposed to be expensive, a place like Abuja, these areas should have a different benchmark. Then rural areas should have a different benchmark. Maybe if the president is looking at it from that angle, then he is in order.
I think so.
He's in order. Because it is wrong in Nigeria, for instance. It's wrong for government to think that what the Lagos state government is paying, then a person in far away, the tips of Nigeria should pay the same thing.
Okay.
It is wrong. It's not, that is not how it is in other places.
And it depends.
But the problem, well, I wonder if, you know what, let me go on a quick break. I've been told to go on a quick break. I'll come right back and I'll come straight to you, Austin. Stay with us, please. Welcome back. The president, you know, launched this committee to come up with a new minimum wage, and as he said, the 18,000 that we're using right now has expired. You know, it is well known. It just doesn't make any sense anymore. All the parameters don't add up. Coming back to the standard of living and what we have to do. When there was an increase in the pump price of fuel, it was known that this was going to affect people. And so the president says that, look, his administration is dealing with the matter now with this committee. It's all about consulting with all the social partners and also gaining direct participation with this body that would make the work much lighter later on when it comes to the lawmaking aspect of it, of sending it to the National Assembly. Now, Austin, you were going to come in because the whole idea, because the president did say that, look, we have to come up with a national minimum wage based on the ability of the various tiers to pay. Yeah. And I suppose that works out the way, you know, Luke was explaining it, right?
That's right. And then you have to look at it holistically. Now, increasing the money, why I mentioned the Dodge in 1970 was the ripple effect after that.
Yes.
Okay? Now, once you increase and go beyond this, in the short term, inflation will go up.
Because that happened, remember?
Yes.
The Doji?
We have not recovered from that Doji.
I'm not sure.
Till today.
There was a spending spree.
There was, your father bought 10 television.
All over the place.
All over the place. But the point is that they have to look at, the committee should look at other areas they can cushion the effects, not just increasing the money. The standard of living, so that we can have a higher standard of living. So that people, even if you have 18,000, like I had 125,000 in 1980, okay? 125,000. I was able to take care of a whole lot of things. 125 naira, sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, all
naira.
the estates you must have built.
Yes, at that time, 125 naira.
Exactly.
Is the value of that amount. And that's what the standard of living.
Inflation is always going to be a problem.
That's the standard of living.
Fixing.
Yes. And we are doing inflation targeting. CBN policy is inflation targeting. So it's going to be another wahala for them. Now, if you increase or do anything, we need to look at how much are people paying for transport.
All of these things.
Yes. They have to bring down the price of fuel, which will knock down so that money will make sense. They have to also bring down and begin to produce some of these things that we consume within the country. But
as you know, more than most, bringing down the price of anything is not a matter of pronouncement.
No. You see, that's looking at it holistically. This minimum wage. It's not just the amount to be paid that they should be looking at.
There's so many other
factors.
Well, that's why.
So that it will make sense.
That's why it's a National Minimum Wage Committee. I imagine the experts that are going to be here are going to have to take consideration of all of these things. Lawrence, good morning. Thank you for calling in.
Good morning, Yori.
Thank you for calling in.
Yes. What I think about this issue is, if now the present minimum wage is 18,000 naira, and most of the states cannot, I repeat, cannot pay salaries now, and you're not going ahead to increase the minimum wage, you think it will not be a double standard? How will those states who are not able to pay 18,000 naira now, are we able to pay the new increase?
I'm hearing you.
Yes.
So that's your conundrum right there.
I only believe if government can provide other incentives for Nigerian workers. If I go to the hospital and there is drugs in the hospital and there are doctors there, if my child is in the school, he or she is short of lectures on most of the ASU workers have been on strike now for how long? And are not be settled. There is no light. There is no water in our homes. There are no good roads. If all these are provided and I'm being paid 16,000 naira salary in a month, I think I am comfortable.
Indeed. Okay. Thank you very much for calling in.
That's the point I made earlier.
Yes.
There are several things to improve the standard of living of the people, the quality of life of the people.
It's not just about putting more money
in their pockets
alone.
And have a savings, a strategy. Okay, for instance, that minimum wage, we can borrow ideas. In some countries, that minimum wage, already the lives of the people, if you're graduating from the university, they already know at 25 you're going to own your own home. From the money you're being paid, government is saving for you between 7% and 14% of what you earn. If you put all that money in the hands of the worker, and then man will work 60 years, no house. So that's the kind of thing that I want to look at.
Okay.
Holistically look at it, so that even if you're putting such an amount, how much are you taking away for savings for that person? It's very, very important.
Yes. Maxwell is in Ghana. Thank you very much for calling in. Good morning.
Good morning, and good morning to my senior elder brothers in that place.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I just want to say something concerning this minimum wage issue. What is the work of the salary, wages, and salary commission or something like that? What is their work?
The Tripartite National Minimum Wage Committee.
Okay. Will it always take Buhari to intervene in everything in Nigeria before something is done?
That's the point.
So, listen,
okay.
I don't, the minimum wage as it is now, the way I'm looking at it, the federal government must make that, the minimum wage, a living minimum wage. You clamoring for increasing minimum wage will bring in so many other problems like inflation. It will definitely. How much are Nigerians paying for electricity bill? How much are they paying for water? If at all there is water in Nigeria. How much are they paying for petrol and other associated products of petroleum? How much are they paying for rent? What is the cost of foodstuffs in the market? How are we reducing those things? Even if you increase minimum wage to 100,000 naira, it will, in the next 6 months, we'll be clamoring for more minimum wage increase. You have a great day in Lagos, sir.
Indeed. Thank you very much for calling. And the president's speech complicates things a bit to payers by urging people to pay workers before Christmas. And it's interesting, Vanguard, that has that on its front page this morning, actually is helpfully enumerating 21 states, no less, that are actually owing Nigeria anywhere from what? I'm looking at the figures here. It could be 4 months, it could be 10 to 16 months, as is in the case of Bielsa. So, I mean, it's ridiculous.
Can I say something?
Okay,
yes.
Can I say something? Now, I want to make it, I want to state clearly that there is money in this country to pay minimum wage.
Thing. That's the thing.
There is money.
It's wicked of anyone that cannot pay.
Listing states that are not paying doesn't mean that they did not get money.
Yes.
They got money. The money was or is mismanaged. That's the cause of
Diverted.
You can call it anything.
Diversion is also
the
mismanagement.
money is not used
they were trying to be polite here.
judiciously. The money is not used judiciously.
But what
If the state governments make judicious use of the money they are getting, both internally and from federal allocation and the rest of them, they'll be able to handle all this payment. Sometimes I look back, I ask myself, how many people from my village are working in the civil service?
Yeah.
I can't know anybody. How many people are we talking about in this civil service?
Each state, no state employs more than 200,000.
So the number of people we are talking about is minimal. Majority of Nigerians are fending for themselves. The problem is not that there is no money, that because a state is not paying, therefore there is no need for minimum wage. There is need for minimum wage. Then the next level is it is incumbent, or the onus lies on the states to make appropriate use, adequate use of the money they are getting internally and from external, from the federal government.
But how you can owe your workers? I guess it's a mental makeup sort of a thing, because you owe, you know you're supposed to pay, and I know I'm being a bit more human than perhaps being economic and labor-like here, but where is the mentality of you're not going to pay your workers because it's priorities?
Yes.
It depends on what you prioritize, right? And so this is part of the problem. What prioritizing has been going on, that states from Abia to Adamawa to Rivers to Taraba to Federal Capital Territory, Kaduna, name it, 21 of them according to one paper.
Even federal.
Yes, even federal. These people are still owing. But there's Mohammed in Damaturu. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Yuri.
Thank you for calling in. Go ahead, please.
Hello. Hello?
Good morning, Mohammed. Go ahead, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello?
We can hear you, Mohammed.
Oh, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. My take here is that new minimum wage. Yes, new minimum wage is a very welcome development. You can hear me?
We can.
As I said, it is a welcome development, this new minimum wage. But the problem is that many states are yet, more states cannot pay their workers. Paris Club money has been given to them. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Giving,
don't worry.
Bailout funds, but most of them cannot pay still. And what of it if now the money has been increased? That is, the minimum wage has been raised. And the next issue is that what of the inflation? Now the minimum wage is 18, and now the inflation is still on the rise. Don't you think that increasing the minimum wage will also cause another inflation?
Indeed. Well,
No?
thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mohammed. That is exactly what is being said in studio. But then again, perhaps, you know, the guys in that committee, the Tripartite committee, perhaps they're better than you and I. And so they know a way out of this, because the president is going to wait to be. And by the way, they have to submit the results as soon as possible.
The report.
The report. As soon as possible, ASAP.
Yeah.
Interesting deadline. But I've got to go on a break.
Okay.
I'll come back and come to you. Stay with us, please. Okay, welcome back. We're looking at the Tripartite Committee on the National Minimum Wage that the President has inaugurated, admonishing or urging, really it's not admonishing, urging people to, when I say people, employers of labor, and just about everybody who owes anybody a salary, to pay workers before Christmas. Now, the whole idea of 18,000, and we've got to go above that, seems exciting, but I think it's fraught with challenges, such as have been explained since this program started. What would you say to Luke's position that, you know what, we can pay comfortably if we wanted to?
Yes. I agree with Toto. There is no government. Look at it this way. An average worker spends a minimum of 80% of his time in the workplace. His whole being, his spirit, his soul, his body. And it's a sin against those people. It's a sin against his creator for you not to pay after devoting such amount of time and hours, committing to doing work. And at the end of the day, you say you cannot pay.
Yeah, but these are the things that the governors among them will have to be explaining to that committee.
Yes, because one is that
because that's why there are governors there now.
They have money.
And so they have to explain how
what are they doing with the money?
To owe workers.
Yes. What are they doing with the money they have, the allocations they are receiving? Even if for anything, we know that like the other caller mentioned, we know we have a structural problem in our democracy. You know, the way it's structured. Like the caller said, why should everybody now go to why does it have to take the president to tell people to do their work and all that, to pay? Is the way the thing is structured. Our democracy is structured. You know, so it's vertical, okay? So we take orders from the top. So people are not even allowed to use their own common sense to sort out their own this thing. Let me give you an example.
Yeah, but this thing is a matter of law.
Some states.
It's the minimum wage.
Yes.
So by that, I, in a simplistic way, understand that, look, the national minimum wage is 18,000 naira.
Yes.
But by definition that it is minimum, if perchance a state named Exosia State decides that I can pay 35,000, by all means,
that is, let me just name the state. One state that was paying above the minimum wage, Anambra State. They paid above the minimum wage on their own. When others were not paying salaries, they increased salaries by at least 10%.
How did they pull off that trick?
That's the point. Creativity.
Okay, look.
Now, the idea of minimum wage, as I said, is a benchmark. Now, I want to give a brief historical, insight into this thing.
Very brief.
Yes, very brief. Minimum wage is, started from the Western world. It started actually as far back as 13th century, 13 something, in Britain. After the Black Plague, a lot of people died, and there was need for labor. People were, factories and industries were looking for manpower, and so they were offering a lot of, pay. So the idea, in fact, this minimum wage, the idea started from maximum wage. So the king that time had to fix a maximum wage, a ceiling. Now, the idea of minimum wage now came later. In fact, it started in Australia and New Zealand, all those places. But the idea is, If somebody is paid 18,000, I mean the original concept in the Western concept, when you are paid 18,000 naira, it doesn't mean that you are going to use the 18,000 to pay for transport, to pay for NEPA, to pay for not paying for NEPA, buying kerosene or buying fuel to generate your own power, buy your own water and the rest of them. No. This minimum wage is called living wage. It's money that can take care of you as an individual
in spite of
on daily basis. Yeah. That's the idea. This is minimum 18,000. If you give it to me at my level of education and the social development, it can take care of me, assuming that government there is NEPA.
Exactly.
There is transport. In America, in all this Western world where this idea started, there is mass transit and the rest of them.
Exactly.
So you come in, you pay minimal something, and then you enter a bus, you enter train, you enter tram, you enter subway, and the rest of them. There is light, there is water. But here, somebody is giving 18,000, he has to go and buy a bag of pure water. If he doesn't buy, he will not drink. He has to buy kerosene, he has to buy a small generator, yes, and so on and so forth. So that is why minimum
water, if he can't sink his own borehole.
Yes, that is why minimum wage is not working. It doesn't mean that if these other facilities are provided, so a person can manage the minimum wage to, suit his own purpose within a month.
The answer to this is that the president observed in his speech that, look, he noted as well as everybody else noted that when the pump price of fuel rose, it was going to affect people negatively, and they haven't been able to deal with that. And this is as good an opportunity as any.
Yes.
Seems to be, the president's attitude. It's not going to be an easy one.
No, it's not going to be easy. And another thing, Yori, is that what are we going to do? There have been other committees set up.
I beg your pardon. I completely forgot. Akin in Magodo is waiting. Akin, are you still there? I apologize. Good morning.
I'm still here.
Please, I'm so sorry to have kept you waiting. Please go ahead.
The apologies are accepted.
Please go ahead.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, good morning to the guests.
Good morning.
Apparently, I want to leave with a Wednesday. The professor. I think that one of the reasons for a minimum wage in this part of the world is or should be to augment the inflationary trends that occur in Nigeria, because you need to understand that the same trend of salary has been occurring since the 70s. Now, for example, if you look back and look at the relativity, this salary structure, you'll find out that people are not actually better off. They're still the same. Because when you look at the exchange rate in the 70s and what it is now, they are still paying people $120. You understand? Which was what 90 naira was in the 70s, in the days of the rich. So really and truly, nothing concrete is happening in terms of salary structure and salary increment. The other part of it, which the Prof was talking about, is that the incentive to save by workers is not there. You see, when you give people money, you must also give them the ability to save. Two, banks need those money as well to liquidate the economy. We are not doing anything concrete. This minimum wage is nothing. It's nothing at all, because we are not even seeing anything. Right now, look at the trend with inflationary rate. Inflation is about 18%. The naira has been debated. Exchange rate is about 365. Now tell me, in the name of goodness, what can you do with 66,000 naira? Lick rice is 18,000. Tell me, what can you do with it? You understand what I mean? So when we are talking about salary structures, I think we need to look beyond what it is right now, and augment something that is much more sensible for the Nigerian workers, so that they can at least give us the effective working work pattern God bless you, sir.
All right. Thank you very much for calling in, Aki. We are hearing of requests from NLC, NSL to review 56,000 naira. I understand someone else is saying that, look, 96,000 naira is more like it. This thing can quickly get out of hand.
If they want, they're not doing the economy any good. I've always argued. They should be looking at how to cushion the effect, what other ancillary provisions they can have.
They probably are aware that those are so very difficult, is why they're trying for all those things you're talking about via a 96,000 naira minimum wage, so that the poor man or woman can also access some of these things that clearly 18,000 naira is not going to access.
No, well, if you ask me, I would rather have the 18,000
and then
a minimum wage.
Yes.
And then other things to make it more, and that's what you talk about. Yeah, all the facilities. That's what you
affordable
have.
housing.
Yes. Do you know?
Power.
Do you know?
Power. Most importantly.
Do you know, Yori? In Europe, in Germany, the minimum wage is higher than in the U.S. But the U.S. has a higher standard of living than in Germany and Europe. Why? Because if you have $1,000, it can only buy you 5 items in Germany. With the same $1,000 can buy you almost 10 or 8 or 10 items in the US. That's standard of living. That's what we're talking about here. And then you talk about the quality of life of the people. So if I would rather have that 18,000 and then we have a higher standard of living in Nigeria that will pay the workers better than having 100,000 minimum wage and the standard of living drops.
Well, I hope those guys, the members of that committee, I hope they're listening. Good morning. Is it Samuel? Samuel in Abuja, good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Uncle Yeri. How are you today?
Good morning, sir. Thank you for calling in.
How are you today, Uncle Yeri?
Very well, thank you.
Good morning.
I hope you're good too.
I want to commend Mr. President for taking a giant stride.
Sure.
By trying to review the minimum wage as far as the plight of our workers are concerned in Nigeria. But there's a very serious issue I want to really point out here.
Okay.
Is the sustainability by state governors. It is really appalling that whenever you want to rectify or solve problem of Nigerian workers, you must call governors for them to understand that they need to do the right thing. Why must it take Mr. President to summon all the governors to tell them to go and pay people that have labored for them? It will shock you if I review some of the things we've seen in some states. Could you believe that projects handled by small-scale contractors by some states in this country for the past 2 years and 5 months now, some governors have refused to pay them simply because the jobs were done by governors from the other party. You can imagine the kind of thing that is going on in this country. We have people that are heartless. Why are we heading to when we say we want to alleviate the problem of the common man and have leaders that are heartless? It is terrible.
All right.
May God help this country.
All right. Amen. Thank you very much, Samuel.
We're saying amen in this thing.
It's a prayer.
Because you see, there's a certain laxity with which those in charge of paying people's salaries, have lived their lives. That is totally doable in Nigeria.
I have said this before, that the money is available. The problem is how to utilize it to solve the problem at hand.
And for this, you're going to have to depend on the governors, since nobody should come and be dictating to governors what to do, and that is part of the problem.
In fact, it is well, the president. I think I will commend the president, because even when immediately he was inaugurated, he was not happy that many state governments were owing, and that was what brought up the bailout. He advanced money to states to pay.
He didn't know who the people, kind of people
he was working with. So many of
they chop the money.
They chop the money.
They chop the money.
That's what I'm saying, that there is money.
Yes.
Some governors...
Some people are heartless, like the person they call her.
Yes. Some governors even cut, if you're being owed 80,000, 5 months, they cut us, okay, we can only pay you for 2 months, and then you forget about the other 3 months. That's what some of the governors did.
Wait a minute. Let's hear it from Franklin in Banana Island. Good morning, Franklin.
Good morning, Uncle Yori.
Thank you for calling in, sir.
To your guest.
Indeed.
Thank you very much. So, Uncle Yori, sometimes I just wonder the way of business, the way they behave. How can a state be owing people for 5 months, 6 months, 10 months, and so many months like that?
Even 16 months.
The governors themselves, are they not being paid on daily basis? For instance, take a look at somebody like Rochas Okorocha, which is the governor of my state, has been owing staff, has been owing workers for so many months. And then he went ahead and started erecting structures and all the rest of them. If you put all those monies together, can't that money be used at least to pay some of the workers? Imagine, people are going through hell. How can somebody be owed 10 months? This is November. December is almost there. How do you expect them to feed? How do you expect them to live? How do you expect them to transport themselves to where they are working? It is very, very, very unfair. I think the best thing for us to do in this country is that we, the youth, we actually have to wake up and then find a means to take out these people from, from power, because the truth about it is that they are just there for themselves. They don't care for the ordinary man. That is my contribution this morning.
Indeed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And that is not the way politicians are supposed to be. Hopefully that's not the way politicians in this dispensation are. So let's just stay on that theoretical basis. Sure. Then what then is left is, but what kind of people, human beings, just like Franklin said, how can you owe people? So the prioritizing that is going on, people are getting away with blue murder if you're not prioritizing. And first of all, maybe part of the problem is that, as you know, governments, they just employ labor sometimes for no reason at all. No reason at all. You got to remember, there's that portion of civil servants that really don't need to be there, but sorry, just leave them there. So there's part of house tidying where we have to decide who is a worker and become more efficient. Although we've had this conversation before, and politicians who have sat down with us have said that, sorry, it sounds good, lean government and all of that, but it's not going to work. You need to put some fat on the bone. And this goes back to this whole story of the president saying that, look, those things will be done. Everybody, it's not just at the minimum wage level, everybody feels that they can't live in this country anymore, that they can't afford to live in this country anymore. And you have continued to emphasize, and Austin has agreed with you, that the money is there.
It's there.
It's about how we dispense of it. Exactly. But if the money is there, how can somebody be owing 10 months is the question Franklin was asking.
Yes. Oh, okay, sorry, please. Let me just take this. Because one is that if you know the kind of brain drain, especially in the medical field, leaving this country, it's huge because of non-payment of these salaries. Because the attitude is like they're doing you a favor for the fact that you wake up, you come to work, you still have a place. It's like they're doing you a favor. It should be the other way around.
Yeah, but why can't governors pay, for example? Not just governor, but why can't governors pay? Is it that they don't see that it should be first
It's
charged?
not a priority. It's not a priority.
That is it. It's not a priority. Someone's on the line, too. Okay, Mazi Okoroafo in Abia. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, our guests in the studio. Good morning, sir.
Morning.
Good morning. Mr. Yori, Nigeria issue is not, thank God for what the president said, increment, but that is not the issue. We need good roads. 247 electricity supply, graduate employment with all facilities available. Mr. Yodi, go to the market. Garden today is 200 to 250. It should come down. Rice, 500 and above naira. That is a mudo. Now, you see, the governors will not pay any shit. When we talk about minimum wage and salary, our governors have turned to be a king god in any environment. People now worship the governors as if they are worshiping God. Instead of to worship God, they are worshiping the government because because of this worshiping, they have not created room where the governor now continue squandering at the salaries and the wages. Like one of our guests rightly said, Nigeria is a very rich country. Because of greed, the selfishness, your gas stays continuous. Now, ask like what the last caller said. Now, tell me, what will be the intention of the governor not to pay just a minimum wage, which is said should pay, which is 18,000, and you have not paid, like what the last caller said. It is already happening that we carry these holy books, so-called our God, and you know that people need. You cannot pay your child school fees. People are paying school fees. Very soon they will not write their pay some exam. The child have been sent home because some children they have been sent home because they have not paid their school fees and they have been sent home. Very soon now, some will announce for their registration. Very soon, WAEC will announce for them. And these are the parents. They have children and they are supposed to be paid their money. Honestly, what the last one? Our short, the governors in this country, very few, and the rest, they are very, very wicked. Let them go to the Bible, how the Holy Book says. Tell the worker that a worker deserves his work. Wait, goes back and I don't know. They read all these holy books and come back, and our little will not be worshiping them, creating more problem for this country. It is not increment that is a Nigerian problem. The problem is that are they going to be, because election is around the corner, they will now use now to campaign and get 2019. That's what's happening. Maybe they will delay. Maybe 6 months to the election. You say they are giving you maybe 30,000 or 40,000. People will tell you, at the end of the day, they will just do that. Everything will come down. Thank you very much. Have a blessed day in Lagos.
Oh, indeed. Thank you very much, Mazi, for calling in.
It's all over the place.
Politics.
Yeah.
Going
this situation.
But how do we survive in Nigeria? First of all, we're hearing, we know, but we are just hearing it that this minimum wage, inadequate as it is not being paid. Yet, we are looking stronger. We are looking brighter. We have this smile on our face.
It goes back to the question he asked.
We have this smile on our face. If any politician starts anything now and there's going to be a rally, you see a sea of heads. So we're not getting indications that we are not comfortable. This society is not working. In fact, everything you get is a cover-up that, we're a happy lot.
Yeah, because Luke mentioned earlier about the fact that we are the way we are, it's not because any other thing is happening to us.
So what is it?
I said that
Nigerians
are fending for themselves.
Yes.
Majority of Nigerians.
And the governors seem to have decided that we're doing a very good job of it. So they don't need to be paying the salary regularly.
You see what you said now?
Yes.
Sorry. Former President Babangida, at the critical time of his regime on this economy, he said that he doesn't know what is driving this economy.
1993.
Yes, I remember that.
He said he doesn't know what is.
All
the economic logic and principles have failed here.
Yes.
That still he doesn't know why the economy keeps moving is because Nigerians
informal sector.
Is informal sector.
Yes.
Nigerians are not on a typical Nigerian wakes up. He doesn't recognize government
at all.
He is concerned with himself.
Yes.
Unlike, say, in America, in Japan, in all those places, they are looking at what is the government doing. Here, a typical Nigerian wakes up, he knows
that government is not
thinking of Nigeria.
For me. Aishat, in Abuja, good morning. I think we lost Aishat there. See if you can get back in, Aishat. We try to get to you.
It's the informal sector, Yuri, that is driving why, we wake up in the morning. As far as an average...
So all employers of labor and government in particular are just leaning on that?
On that. And check out, in Lagos State, how many government workers do we have? Maybe 200,000. In Rivers, maybe 150,000. And with this number, and look at the population of these places. What has been sustained? It's not the government sustaining them.
Okay.
It's the informal sector.
You know, there are experts who said if you looked at it with real koro eye, that 200,000 number could actually come down.
I'm saying that the government...
So that is why I said that government...
Yes, it's over-bloated.
Component is bloated now.
It's bloated. We are running a bloated government and all that.
Because when a person doesn't know what to do, can't find anything to do, he uses all sorts of connections to get some place in a civil service somewhere.
Yeah, it's not former governor of Adamawa State. Some years ago, he said, okay, to create jobs for the people, he had to employ about 1,000 assistants. Assistants. I know a governor to provide this and to calm the youth down every week, every month, he gives them 5,000 for doing nothing. Some of them 10,000 for doing nothing, just to calm them down.
And you see, that's a problem right there.
Yes.
And these, hopefully,
in the name of creating jobs.
Well, maybe this Tripartite National Minimum Wage Committee is going to
look at all these
be able to
now.
Get some traction.
Yeah.
But it remains to be seen. And if we don't bring a fresh attitude to it, I don't think things are going to change. Fresh attitude being a reprioritization,
Sure.
of what the values are.
Yeah. The government, like I said at the beginning, the government coming up with this idea now, I believe they must have thought about it and they want to really do something. So let this thing not just be a fluke. Let it work.
Well, we hope so. We're keeping our fingers
we
crossed.
it is going to work.
Yes. And then we'll...
Then the government, like we have said here, should do other things that will cushion
Yes. So that there's not too much
the
pressure
impact on the Nigerian, on the typical Nigerian. A situation where you are doing everything for yourself, no amount of minimum wage will solve it.
Indeed. Well, thank you very much.
No, you're before
yes.
you just wrap
in
up.
Closing,
in closing, yeah. It behoves the media, you're to constantly remind the government that these reports must come out quick, and it must be implemented. Unlike in the past, some reports have not been implemented.
Indeed.
So that is the thing. The media should now take over this to make sure, if they care about the workers, if they care about the common man,
keep it constantly in view as a subject.
That's
Thank you very much, Dr. Austin Nweze, lecturer at Pan Atlantic University, and thank you to Dr. Luke Onyeke-Keya, member of the editorial board of the Guardian newspaper. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
For sharing your perspectives with us. Okay, that's our program then. Please join me tomorrow for a fresh edition. I'm Yori Folani. Bye-bye for now.